Hello and good morning. I wanted to come in today actually with more of a teaching for you to remember your inner and outer resources. And I was inspired to, and we're going to do a creative practice that you can watch, of course, the replay on anytime, and I'll make the recording available. But I was inspired to create this small practice by a few different people, including myself. We all have a lot of inner resources and outer resources that are easy to pull from on a day-to-day basis when things are going well. And then when the shit hits the fan, we tend to forget about our inner strength, our inner resources, all the practices and outer resources that we have at our disposal in our medicine basket, and the people that are in our world that we can go to for support. And I was really feeling into that thread of when we set goals or we would like to transform something within ourselves, we tend to forget all of the resources that we have. So I wanted to share a practice to help us remember what those are and then to pull from them when we need them. And this practice can be used just in general to pull when things are not going the way we would like them to go. That we pull, basically you'll see it's a round card, and we pull randomly from our bucket of resources, and we may end up pulling one that's a reminder of our inner resources, such as resiliency or strength or grace. Or we may pull something out and says, oh, yes, I learned this practice from my mentor or my teacher or a book I read or a class that I took. And I'm going to try that to shift whatever's happening in my world right now. A few weeks ago, my mother ended up in the hospital, and that was a time, and then at my home for another 2 weeks to recover. And that was supposed to be my visioning, my internal time, this time to take all of this space and understand what my vision is and know what resources I have to pull from in order to bring that vision into form. And all of that fell away. And I had to be very, very present. And yet I had to stay aligned for myself and for my family. And also at the same time, not go into hot mess express. And so I had to dig deep and pull from those practices within myself and that I've learned over the years that maybe, did not require a week of visioning time or even an hour on the meditation cushion, but small breathing practices, asking myself the question of, how can I approach this situation with truth and grace? And still be very much in a sacred space within myself and outside of myself. And so this practice again can be used just in general on a day-to-day basis. Pull one and say, this is practice I want to work with today. Or, when shit is hitting the fan and you forget all the resources you have to pull from that. It can also be used for something very specific, like I want to transform this or that. And here are the resources and tools that I know I have in order to do that. It can be used. Many of you are busy as bees making boards and strategy plans and goal lists and all of those things. And so often when I teach those processes or I see other people taking those sorts of classes, that they forget to look at the support resources they need and the internal resources that they need and some external, and call in and ask for that support when it's needed, and at the same time be open to receiving it. I've been talking about receiving a lot lately, and I often get asked, well, how do I receive? And part of it is knowing what to ask for. And knowing that we have these resources. I don't believe that there is a vision, a dream, or a goal that you have that you don't in some way already have the inner and or outer resources in which to bring that vision into form. You may have to go learn a tool or a technique or a skill. That is part of listing out those supports that you may need, but most of it comes from within or comes from your mentors and teachers or collaborators or accountability partners or the classes you have taken and the books you have read. I know in speaking with my own clients, I give them lists of practices and then I'll see them post something on Facebook and I'm like, why aren't they using the practice I gave them? It's because we often get information overload and we don't remember what we have access to. So today's teaching is really on remembering and creating yourself a deck of remembrance cards around your resources. And it can be used in a multitude of ways and pulling from those when necessary. Again, it could be random, like you just don't know what you need, or it could be very intentional that you're working on a specific transformational process. Let's say having stronger boundaries, and you may create a tool basket or bucket full of these cards. And one of your tools that perhaps maybe I even taught you in session is, if you know that you're going somewhere where your energy gets really wonky, or the energy you're stepping into is not aligned, or that you're stepping into a space where people will ask a lot of you and you will have a hard time maintaining your boundaries in saying yes or no, then you may pull a card that says, oh, yeah, I remember. I was taught to ground and shield my energy in this way. And I know for myself, I have a library full of books loaded with practices that I don't always remember. So for myself, I'm going to start having these cards nearby. I read at night and I often don't do the practices as I'm reading the book. And so it's something I will start making note of, that, hey, that practice really resonated with me. I don't want to forget it. And here's what book it was in and what the practice was and where I can find it again. So as a reminder, or to bring it when you're taking online courses, whether it's for spiritual and personal growth or it's for your business, that you have these reminders of what was said. It's yes, you could take notes, but for me, my I have so many notebooks that I don't remember where everything is. So it's the same as a book that was written by somebody else. It might be sitting on a shelf somewhere and I don't even recall all the notes I took. So with these cards in a very, conspicuous place, you can remember, you can pull from them, you can grab them. So and they're standalone, as opposed to sometimes when we go through courses, like even the ones I'm currently in a few where I'm learning, some more deeper level coaching work, and to remember every tool that I've been given to use for myself and to use for others, and when I might use that is as I go through the program, really an exercise again in remembering, like, oh yes, in the beginning of the program, now I'm 10 months down the line in this program. I want to go back and remember what I learned in the beginning to be used in this specific situation or to make this specific transformation. So creating some cards that are in an auspicious place, or carrying them with you, or having them by your bedside if you're a reader like I am. I've been given the teachings and the processes in so many lineages. Again, I often forget. So I've been thinking about one that was taught to me by Heather Ashimara, the Warrior Heart Practice, which is an amazing practice when you're running a lot of past story and you can't really see through what's true right now. So I actually am considering, I'm like, okay, I might pull one of the practices I've learned from all of my teachers over the years and choose to do that for 40 days and see what kind of transformation occurs, because 40 days is a great time. Or certain mantras that I know bring me home to center, and yet I don't always remember them in my energy field. So as I'm sitting with what I want to present today, I'm remembering a whole lot of practices and things that bring me back to center, and that things that help me bring visions into form. So it's, like I said, can be used in a multitude of ways. And it is a creative practice. So that opens you up to remember the things you forgot and to get creative with things that may assist you in your journey, particularly if, like I said, you're already in the visioning plan, or you've already done your vision board and now you're in sort of the strategy pieces, the focus pieces of this is a remembrance of what you already have within you and outside of you, both in just knowledge and wisdom and practices, and then also people and community and support. And oh yes, I forgot, I sat on a call with this person and she was very knowledgeable in XYZ, and I'm trying to do something similar. Maybe I should reach out to her. So, it could be a little mini address book too of resources and support. And before I move into the creative practice, certainly ask questions as I go through. I will be answering them after the broadcast is complete so that I can focus on what it is that I'm sharing with you. And as always, I pulled a card, and it's one of those things where you cannot make this stuff up. You never can. And I pulled it from the Spirit Animal Oracle, and it's Ant Spirit, time to collaborate. So I'm not saying that everything that you need to do needs to be a collaboration with others, but being aware where that could be very much a resource for you is a really good thing. I think we often forget that, or we're afraid to reach out and ask in order to receive. And collaborations can also mean within yourself and with your divine, in a co-creation, because that's really what life is, and a remembrance to ask the divine to assist you in co-creation. So collaborate can mean whatever you want it to mean in this context. When Ant Spirit comes to visit, it's to celebrate the benefits of working in a partnership with others as part of a community or tribe. Spirit reminds you that to build your dream, you need to work with others, accept help, and trust in your most important partnership, the one you have with Spirit. Your intentions will come to fruition if you remain awake and focused on co creating your reality with others and with Spirit. Remember that the world around you can easily seduce you if you don't have some sort of practice or discipline like meditation to keep you on track as you build the life you desire. So, remembering those practices is going to be a part of this, as well as any of the external collaborations that you might be doing, or even collaboration with Spirit. You can't really collaborate with Spirit if you don't pull a practice from your toolbox that involves quieting down. And part of what I'm sharing with you today in a watercolor meditation practice is the practice. It can be one of the practices to quiet down and get the information from within yourself and from within Spirit or from divine on what it is you need, what resources you need to do whatever it is that you're attempting to do, or change, or transform, or bring into form. Connecting with others and having accountability partners can be very helpful, as it's unlikely that everyone will fall asleep at the same time. I always love that. And it is important, is knowing when it's time to reach out and not be the lone wolf that we've been conditioned to be. The other message Ant Spirit holds is that you are now at an auspicious time to ask for help and receive it, whether you need help assembling a team, finding a new tribe, or requesting assistance from others who are there for you. Everything is working to support you right now. And there is a protection message here, because this is the lone wolf conditioning we have. Do you really believe that you have to do everything yourself? Do you believe that somehow any help you get will be disappointing or not good enough? I've been there. Perhaps it is time to address your issues of control and bias towards the negative. It doesn't matter where or why you came to be pessimistic or mistrustful. The fact that Ant Spirit is showing up now is a sign that you have the opportunity to heal and to relearn to trust that others will show up for you in a genuine way. Ant Spirit wants you to remember that your expectations and limiting beliefs are a vibrational offering that draws in the opposite of what you desire. Spirit wants to help you and will send collaborative partners your way. It's time to see the universe as conscious and connected, loving and helpful, but you must participate in this activity of co creation. Creating reality is not just about dreaming. If you are feeling orphaned from community, reach out and communicate. If you feel vulnerable, know that being present in your vulnerability can help you draw in someone who wants to assist you. Trust in your partnership with Spirit, and your outer conditions will start to reflect that. Then you will see the miracles waiting for you, including partners who appear ready to lend a hand. And so, advanced practice stage 2 of these resources that you're going to come into awareness of may be that ultimately you're listening and paying attention to when others are asking for assistance, and sometimes it's not so obvious, and that you can also draw from your pool of resources to be the one to step in and lend that assistance. So, another, I believe, gift of this practice that I'm about to show you is that when you see in tangible, you see on these cards and you can make piles and piles and piles of them for different areas of your life, or like I said, just keep it more general and show me what I need, or show me from within what I need right now to deal with this situation. Is that you come into, when you see really how many resources you actually do have, that you then step into the grace of gratitude, of deep, deep, deep gratitude of what it is that you have access to, or could potentially have access to, just by naming it and opening up to receiving it. So I'm going to try to move through the creative practice fairly quickly, um, because we don't want to be here waiting for paint to dry. But I'll give you the steps, and then I always say it's kind of like the cooking shows on TV. They show you a piece of it, and then they have like the part already done to a certain step completed over to the side. So that's what's happening today. And I'm just calling this the Remember Your Inner and Outer Resources practice. I don't have another name for it yet. It just kind of came to me in the last few weeks. Like I said, as I have noticed myself and others, posting about, how will I remember to maintain my boundaries? How will I remember to include self-reflection and self-care in my daily practice when the world is so busy? And it's through this practice of claiming the remembrance and claiming the tools that you have, that maybe you are not in your energy field right now, and you're wanting to recall them literally in remembrance, and recall them back into your energy field. So in this little practice, and I'm one to say you can use whatever supplies you have on hand, but it is a watercolor meditation to start with. And I love using watercolors because they are so freeing. They're obviously fluid, so it's opening up your flow and your fluidity, and it's just about dropping in and listening for what inner and outer resources you have available to you. And as that information comes, you can write it on a piece of scrap paper. Or when your paint is drying on your watercolor paper, you can begin to list them all out in a completely intuitive, free form way. I wouldn't attach them at this point to a certain goal or transformation you'd like to make, but just like lay it all out on the table. And so, of course, you can take as long with this practice as you wish. But I'm using watercolor paints, and one of the sets is one of my favorites that's actually very, very inexpensive. But you can pull out the kids' Crayola watercolor paints. It doesn't have to be anything, a fine art supply. I do have a piece of watercolor paper, which is a heavier paper or mixed media paper. I would recommend at least 90 pounds, otherwise, it won't hold up to the water. And then I have some watercolor paintbrushes, but any paintbrushes will suffice. And then some permanent markers or pens, a fine point Sharpie, or if you're a fountain pen lover, a fountain pen. And then you can ultimately hole punch these, or put them in a basket, or wherever you would like them to be contained for you to pull from. But I am going to go ahead and switch cameras and begin the practice with you. Okay, so here we are with blank paper. A lot of times folks have a real aversion and fear of the blank white space, but we can remedy that quick because we're just using watercolor. So really, the invitation when you do this on your own is to turn on some relaxing music or mantra chants, or whatever floats your boat. I would keep it fairly lyric free, but that's not required. And really be grounded in and take some deep breaths. And I always begin my creative practices with an inquiry. And today, the inquiry is, what inner and outer resources do I have at my disposal? And like I said, this could be, we're not getting to the what just yet, but you're going to just start breathing and putting color on paper. And if words begin to come to you, write them down on your scrap piece of paper as they're coming. And don't question them. Don't try to overthink what it means, or any of that. And so there's a couple of ways you can work with watercolors. There's lots of ways you can work with watercolors. Sometimes I like just putting water without the paint first and getting pretty watery and making shapes on the paper. And remember, this is quiet time to go within. So this in and of itself can be part of your toolbox of practices. And then you can just begin dropping paints on. We're not thinking about this. Just pick colors you're drawn to in the moment. Some of them may end up creating mud if you're mixing warm and cool, but that really does not matter. And so you can just start dropping on and watch it flow to where the water is on your paper. The intent is to pretty much cover the whole sheet. Remember, as resources are coming to you, write them down, take a note. And don't worry if you consider some practices are inner practices that then go outward, and some start outward and come and make a shift within. So don't worry about bucketing too much, but I consider inner practices things like my own creativity, inner gifts that I have, resiliency. That's something, I was born a pretty resilient kid. Fierceness when necessary. Truth. So those are all coming to me in the moment. And just make marks, either with the paint on the brush or again with plain water, and then come down. If you have sparkly paints, it's really fun to see where they go when you just drop water down. You could also let things drip and run, spray bottle. The point here is to have fun. And that is another resource. It's often a remedy, is play and fun. And you can look at it that way too. Like if you're experiencing a difficult emotion, I'm trying to think of one, is even disappointed. And what can the remedy be? What is the inner remedy to be of disappointed? It could be a choice to be in awe. It could be the remedy to anger, at least for me, is almost always play and humor, of which sometimes, depending on what I need in the moment, can come from within as a choice, or sometimes when when I'm really feeling upset with the world, let's say, or the goings on in the world, I just can't seem to drum up my own humor. So what do? I turn on Comedy Central radio because it's just completely inappropriate, non-PC humor. It's like that's what the archetype of the comic is here on the planet for, to be honest. And I don't carry that archetype strongly, although I do have kind of a sarcastic sense of humor. So when I really need, and I just cannot get it from within to move from anger to laughter, sometimes I got to turn on the Comedy Central or pick a comedian I like and watch a YouTube video real quick. So that's an example of a resource you may not even think to use when you're having an emotionally tough day. And so I'm going to move on from this, but the idea is that you are just within your inner wisdom, you're having fun, you're making marks, and you're intuitively making a list of things you consider to be inner and outer resources. I have an outer resource, which again, that's one of those that turns inward if I use it. One of my favorite songs slash chants that I would like to start doing in a 40-day practice in the morning with my mala beads is Earth My Body. And I actually love it in Spanish even more than I love it in English. For some reason, it really resonates with my soul. So I may choose out of my bucket to do this as a 40-day practice, or some of the Kundalini Yoga Kriyas that I have been taught that I sometimes forget about. So that's an example of some external stuff. Right now, I'm reading a book with a practice based in Buddhist tradition about feeding your demons. So at home tonight, I may take a blank card and write down the book, the pages, and the practice that I want to do, because it's going to take a few sessions, if not a few months, of this practice to transform one of the specific things that I want to transform by using this practice. Or I've been watching some beautiful teachings from Mirabai Starr and Matthew Fox on Shift Network about Julian of Norwich, who is a mystic, and she lived through the bubonic plague and still kept a very beautiful and positive outlook on life. And there are some quotes and practices from that I want to remember as I'm watching Mirabai and Matthew share the teachings. And many of the teachings are in both of the books they have written on Julian. So to go back and pull some of those so that I don't forget about them. Like I said, I have two libraries full of books, one at home and one here in the studio. And it's great to read books, but the invitation is to, if the practices within the book really resonate with you, is to do them. That's why these beautiful teachers and authors and writers and mystics write these books, is for them not to collect dust on a shelf and be just philosophy, but be experiential, be practiced. So once you finish your watercolor paper and let it dry, and you can do as many of those sheets as you want. You can choose to do a whole day of this or a half day of this and do different sheets for those different areas of your life. Like I said, if you're visioning, rolling out a new program in your business, do one of those for the resources that you have, inner and outer, and the resources and support that you may need, inner and outer, or skills or knowledge or wisdom, and lay those out along with your vision board. And when you're looking at your goals and saying, okay, this is when I need to do this, but in order to do this, I need to pull in this resource or this support. So here's a bunch that I've already done. First of all, I think they're so pretty. And so I used a roll of masking tape to trace circles and cut them. You can use a large mouth jar or glass. And you can even do different designs with pen on what you see of shapes, perhaps, or just leave them plain. But the reason for circular shapes, instead of just writing all over the flat, well, first of all, for portability, but secondly, the shape, the geometry of the circle holds that energy in a really powerful container. And once you write it down, or write this resource down, or bring it into form, you activate it, essentially. You unlock it for yourself. But then you have to make the commitment to work with it. And so that's why I recommend having these available to you, to pull from first thing in the morning, or to pull when you're musing on something specific, to pull from when you are struggling with something, and to find a resource to help you. So, an example, like I said, might be I write on the back of this card an inner resource, which might be getting creative. Our own creativity, we are creative beings. We are born creative, we have the ability to create. And so this may or may not represent an art process for you, but it may be, you're struggling with a solution to something, and it's like, how do I step out of my own mind and get more creative with this? And of course, my answer to you would be to do a creative process like this and open up to see what wants to come through. But we all have the ability to be creative in our thinking and not just linear. And usually our answers come from our creative minds, not our logical minds. Our logical minds can come help us bring that into form. And so that may be your other internal resource, is wisdom and intelligence. And then let's say we want to have an outer resource. So, all right. Like when I'm feeling out of sorts and out of alignment, one of the things that helped, well, 4 to 5 of the things that help me most is working with the elements of nature. And that's something I create a ritual around almost every day. But some days I don't, or some days I forget, or some days I end up doing it, and it sort of becomes rote. And so the chant, Earth, My Body, which, goes on to actually call in all the elements, is would encourage me and remind me to be much more intentional and quiet. Because at least for me, sound really brings me in. And that's something, like I said, I may choose. In fact, I probably will choose to do that for the next 40 days as a practice. And let's say we're talking about we're maybe constantly running stories as to why we can't do something, or why we're stuck on something, or our story is constantly rooted in a past experience, or even we're ruminating over an interaction that we've had with someone, and we really want to shift that or create positivity out of it. I may draw upon, like I said, a practice I've been trained in called the Warrior Heart. And this is a really good one when we're getting a hard time, having a hard time getting to what's really true in the present moment. My own inner resource of resiliency. Prayer. Treating everything as sacred. And this may mean reflecting on a sacred text. So I'm writing the name of the book that has a bunch of my favorite prayers in it. Or, if you are using this by your bedside and you're reading, I can also use it to say, yeah, remember feeding your demons. And even the page number where the practice is. And so there's a multitude of ways in which you can use these, and I really hope that that's something that you choose to do because, like I said, we all have, excuse me, so many resources at our disposal, and you can make tons and tons of these cards and just be with them. Like I said, because if you begin to look at these pile of resources that you have in front of you, your community, your groups of women that you share space with, your networking groups, your mastermind groups, those are all resources. And if you get specific on what people's skills, gifts, and talents are as well, then you know who to call in when for certain things in your life. And so like I said, you can hole punch these and put them on a ring. I had a ring here, it went somewhere else, and pull from them. If you love to collect baskets, I tend to have little baskets around the house, and remember to draw from them, especially like I said, not when things are great and you have all the time in the world to do your self-reflective practices and your self-care practices, but when times are more difficult and you're having a hard time honoring your inner resources or knowing that you have outer resources that are there to support you or remembering one of the practices I may have given you in a class that you took with me or in one-on-one work, um, is to remember that we have tools, we have resources. So many of us have read 1,000 books and taken 1,000 classes, and let's put some of that knowledge to use excuse me, to serve us and to serve the greater good. Because that ultimately, when we serve ourselves and we are standing in our own sovereignty, we are able to empower others. And in my view, and you all know this about me, that's how we change this world. And that's how we create the world that we want to live in. So I thank you for being here, watching this. And if you have any questions, please do follow up with me. I'm always open to provide you with additional support based on anything that I share that's in a short mini teaching. I'm here to answer questions either through direct email or message, or most of you know how to reach me. So thank you, beloveds. Have a happy Tuesday.